Hollywood's golden age shimmered with glamour, sequins, and dreams. But behind that dazzling facade existed a cutthroat industry that chewed up talent and spat it out. The women who survived and conquered this world weren't just beautiful or talented, they were made of steel. The 10 toughest actresses in Hollywood history didn't just play strong women on screen. They lived it daily in a world designed to break them. These women faced down studio bosses, personal disasters, and public scrutiny, yet emerged stronger than ever. Their toughness wasn't just about endurance. It was about authenticity, courage, and the relentless refusal to bend to an industry that demanded submission. Bette Davis was Hollywood's original warrior. With her piercing eyes and fierce intelligence, she didn't just act tough, she was tough. In 1936, when most stars were bound by studio contracts, Davis sued Warner Brothers for the right to choose her own roles. She lost the lawsuit, but gained something much more valuable: respect. Hollywood finally learned that Bette Davis wasn't some starlet to be bossed around, but a force of nature. She fought hard for good scripts, artistic control, and decent treatment for herself and others, including going to bat for Joan Crawford's pay despite their infamous feud. Davis's career wasn't based on charm, but courage. She bucked beauty standards by accepting unflattering roles, scrapped with directors over the truth, and rose every time she was knocked down. After health crises and professional exile, she reinvented herself. "I survived because I was tougher than anyone anticipated," she once said. And did she? Barbara Stanwyck was steel wrapped in silk. Her life story could have come from one of her own movies. An orphan who was a chorus girl before making it to stardom. At 14, she was self-sufficient. At adulthood, unstoppable. Hollywood executives wanted to mold her into a typical glamorous starlet, but Stanwyck refused. She would not change her name, alter her body, or fake elegance. What separated her was not just her grit, but her work ethic. She memorized every line in each scene, did her stunts, and treated everyone on set with respect. Crews loved her and nicknamed her "steel wrapped in silk." She outmaneuvered studio control by becoming an independent contractor way before it was fashionable, commanding her career with quiet authority. As she grew older, Stanwyck continued to be relevant, moving effortlessly into television. Her life was a testament to endurance sans spectacle, a survivor who has never needed to scream her strength. Katharine Hepburn was Hollywood's magnificent rebel. From her first screen test, she refused to fit in. She wore trousers, spoke her mind, and ignored the social codes of femininity. When labeled box office poison in the late 1930s, she did what no one else dared. She bought her own film rights. The Philadelphia Story, her stage hit, became her cinematic resurrection and cemented her power. Hepburn refused to play Hollywood's game. She rejected publicity stunts, refused interviews, and dressed for herself, not for photographers. Her independence reached well beyond her career. She never married Spencer Tracy. Despite their decades-long relationship, she never had children, and she never apologized for living on her terms. Critics called her arrogant, but history calls her revolutionary. She redefined what it means for a woman to be in control, showing the world that, rather than obedience, it's authenticity that's the true path to greatness. Shirley Temple, the iron will behind the dimples, perhaps seems out of place among Hollywood's toughest. Few had her inner strength. Behind the cherubic smile and perfect curls was a child of extraordinary intelligence and professionalism. She memorized scripts after one read, instantly mastered choreography, and instinctively understood filmmaking. As a child, she faced predators and power abusers, yet never allowed herself to be victimized. When an MGM producer exposed himself to her at the age of 12, she laughed in his face and walked out. Later, when her parents squandered nearly all her fortune, she rebuilt her life with intelligence and purpose. This dimpled dynamo became a diplomat and served as U.S. ambassador to Ghana and Czechoslovakia. Even an assassination attempt couldn't take the charm away. Her bravery also reached into her personal battles. She publicly spoke about her breast cancer when few could. Shirley Temple Black's strength was hidden beneath charm, but it was unbreakable. She did not just endure Hollywood, she transcended it. Joan Crawford was the indomitable survivor, Born into poverty and abuse, she had clawed her way from maids' quarters to the mansions of Beverly Hills. Every inch of her success was self-made. She had trained herself to speak, move, and dress like a star, studying light and camera angles and discipline as if her life depended on it, which it did. When MGM dropped her at 38, she staged a comeback with Mildred Pierce and won an Oscar, silencing every critic. Crawford's toughness bordered on obsession, up at dawn for beauty rituals, impeccable homes, perfection from everyone around her. She was accused of cruelty, yet beneath it all was terror of falling back into poverty. Every demand, every fight, was rooted in survival. Even her bitter rivalry with Bette Davis was part of a lifelong war for control and respect in a man's world. Loved or hated, Joan Crawford outlived them all. Each of these women faced a world that told them to smile, to comply, to fade gracefully when their time was over. But they refused. Their toughness wasn't a performance, it was a way of life. They fought for respect, autonomy, and dignity in an industry built to deny them all three. Through scandal, heartbreak, and reinvention, these actresses didn't just survive Hollywood. They conquered it, one unbreakable woman at a time. Lucille Ball was far more than the red-haired clown America adored on I Love Lucy. Beneath the laughter and slapstick timing was a woman of exceptional intelligence, determination, and business acumen. Her journey to becoming one of Hollywood's most powerful figures began with years of rejection and struggle. During the 1930s, she was typecast in B-movies, rarely given a chance to show her comedic range. But Ball refused to give up. She took every role available, using each as a stepping stone to prove what she could do. Her perseverance paid off when she turned her radio show, My Favorite Husband, into a television phenomenon, insisting that her real-life husband, Desi Arnaz, play her on-screen partner. When CBS executives resisted the idea of showcasing an interracial couple, Ball and Arnaz bet everything on themselves, creating a touring act to prove audiences would embrace them. Their gamble succeeded, and in 1951, I Love Lucy became the most-watched show in America. But what made Ball's success historic wasn't just her talent. It was her fearlessness in business. Along with Arnaz, she co-founded Desilu Productions, a revolutionary move that made them both producers of their own content. Arnaz negotiated a contract that gave them ownership of the show's episodes after they aired, a clause unheard of at the time and one that would later make them millions in syndication. Ball also pushed for filming with multiple cameras and live audiences, techniques that transformed television forever. When her marriage to Arnaz collapsed in 1960, she refused to let personal heartbreak end her career. Instead, she bought out his share of Desilu, becoming the first woman to head a major television studio. Under her leadership, she approved bold, risky shows like Star Trek and Mission Impossible, which later became cultural landmarks. Even under political scrutiny during the McCarthy era, Ball faced accusations of communist sympathies with honesty and composure, refusing to hide or deflect. Her forthrightness saved her career and enhanced her credibility. By the end of her life, she had not only entertained generations, but also redefined what women could achieve in Hollywood's power structure. As one colleague said, she built an empire in lipstick and heels. Mercedes McCambridge may not be a household name today, but within Hollywood, she was the stuff of legendary performer and a fighter known as the Velvet Hammer. She won an Oscar for her very first film, All the King's Men, and immediately established herself as a serious, no-nonsense actress who refused to soften her edges for fame. Her deep voice and fierce authenticity made her stand out in a world that prized glamour over grit. She swore openly, smoked unapologetically, and talked about her alcoholism with raw honesty long before it was acceptable for public figures to do so. She handled Hollywood's darker realities with fearless defiance. When a male co-star groped her on set, she didn't complain to the studio, she physically defended herself, making it clear she wasn't going to be treated like so many women who suffered in silence. That act of courage gave her a lasting reputation for being untouchable, both professionally and personally. McCambridge also fought fiercely for credit and recognition. When her contribution as the voice of the demon in The Exorcist was initially left uncredited, she launched a public campaign that forced the studio to acknowledge her work. Yet behind her strength was deep vulnerability. She struggled with addiction, divorce, and devastating loss when her son was murdered. Despite these hardships, she kept moving forward, finding resilience in survival itself. Her life reflected a balance between confrontation and endurance. She could be fierce on set and heartbreakingly human off it. Within the industry, she was respected not for glamour or box office power, but for authenticity and courage. Directors valued her intensity, and actors admired her integrity. Mercedes McCambridge may not have been a star in the traditional sense, but she was a pioneer for women who refused to play nice in a business that demanded submission. Mae West was Hollywood's original provocateur, the woman who made censors blush. Long before sexual liberation became a cultural movement, she turned scandal into strategy. From the beginning of her career, West insisted on controlling her image and her words. As a teenager in vaudeville, she wrote her own material, crafting the bold, witty persona that would define her. Her play Sex caused such outrage that she was arrested and jailed for obscenity in 1926. But instead of being ruined, she turned her jail time into publicity, emerging more famous than ever. West's attitude toward censorship was summed up perfectly in her own words: "I believe in censorship. I made a fortune out of it." When she made the jump to Hollywood in her late 30s in age, when most actresses were being pushed aside, she insisted on script control, rewriting her dialogue to make sure her trademark double entendres remained intact. Her first major film, She Done Him Wrong, was a box office sensation and single-handedly saved Paramount Pictures from bankruptcy during the Depression. Her wit and frank sexuality were so disconcerting to moral watchdogs that her success directly led to a tightening of Hollywood's censorship code. West simply adapted, becoming even more ingenious in her phrasing, saying everything without ever actually saying anything. In addition to her sensuality, she was a shrewd businesswoman who owned her scripts, controlled her image, and invested her earnings wisely. She outlived her critics and continued to perform into her 80s, refusing to be bound by anyone's expectations about aging or what it means to be a woman. Her toughness was in its control in her art, her finances, and her identity. She didn't just play with the rules. She rewrote them with a wink and a smile. Lauren Bacall's career began with a tremor literally. Nervous during her first film, she dropped her chin to steady herself, thus creating the look that would become iconic. That moment says everything about Bacall, taking fear and turning it into power. At 19, acting opposite Humphrey Bogart in To Have and Have Not, she held her own and created instant legend. She could have let her marriage to Bogart overwhelm her, but Bacall refused to be defined by anyone else. She battled studio head Jack Warner over creative control, rejecting roles she felt beneath her and accepting suspension without pay rather than compromise. Her marriage to Bogart was a meeting of equals, and she learned from him how to fight against Hollywood's manipulations. After the death of Bogart, Bacall, 32, reinvented herself once more. She moved onto the stage and won 2 Tony Awards for Applause and Woman of the Year, proving she was more than just a screen siren. Her resiliency extended into her personal life. When her second husband, Jason Robard, succumbed to alcoholism, she left rather than repeat old patterns. She spoke frankly about the trials of aging in a youth-obsessed industry, confronting it with wit and realism, not denial. Her candor and strength made her one of the few stars who maintained dignity across decades of shifting Hollywood values. As one director said of her, sultry, yes. Submissive, never. Bacall didn't just have the look. She had the backbone to match. Debbie Reynolds was the eternal optimist of Hollywood, but her sunny image masked a survivor's heart. She endured public humiliation, financial ruin, and heartbreaking loss, yet kept smiling and pushing forward. The scandal that first tested her resilience was monumental. Her husband, Eddie Fisher, left her for Elizabeth Taylor, her close friend. The betrayal was splashed across every headline, but Reynolds refused to retreat. She continued working, turning personal pain into professional momentum, and eventually transformed the scandal into part of her charm. They knocked her down, and she tap danced back, a friend said, and she did, quite literally. Still, it wasn't easy being America's sweetheart. Her second husband gambled away their fortune, leaving her millions in debt. Rather than declare bankruptcy, Reynolds worked to pay it all back, performing tirelessly around the country to keep a roof over her family's head. Later in life, she dedicated herself to the preservation of Hollywood history, amassing one of the largest private collections of movie memorabilia ever assembled. When that dream museum failed, she took the failure graciously and with humor. The greatest heartbreak, of course, was the death of her daughter, Carrie Fisher, followed by her own a day later, a poetic, tragic end to a life defined by love and loyalty. Through it all, Reynolds represented a quieter kind of toughness, the strength to hold a smile when it all falls apart. Her resilience wasn't loud or combative. It was steady, graceful, and unstoppable. In a world built on illusions, Debbie Reynolds' greatest act was being genuinely strong.